Think we might have critical mass right now. So why don't we get started? Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon, wherever you are in the world. I'm Annie Scow. I'm RARE's Chief Development Officer, and I am proud to welcome you to today's session for an insider's look on community-led conservation in Mozambique. I've had the pleasure of traveling to Mozambique and, a few months ago and spending some time with Caleb and Alice. And I'm not sure if everybody has a chance to see the short video that encompasses our work in Mozambique, but I encourage you guys to watch it. I, for one, was super impressed with the team and the landscapes and the people, the communities. They welcomed us with open arms, and I was so grateful for that experience. And I'm really glad that we're going to be bringing a piece of that to you today. I see some familiar faces on the call and some new ones, which is really, really exciting. So before we dive in, just a quick housekeeping notes. Please introduce yourself in the chat if you feel comfortable. Leave your camera on if you feel comfortable. We will begin with a very short program from our two speakers, followed by a Q&A discussion. We request that, raise your hand out loud if you have questions, but we also welcome you to type your questions in the Q&A functions at the bottom of the screen. If we don't get to your questions, we will absolutely follow up with your questions. And with that, again, thank you for joining us, and I'm going to hand it over to Caleb.
Thank you, Annie, and great to see so many of you here. A number of folks we've talked to over the summer, and really enjoyed getting into where RARE is headed for the next few years. So I'm going to bring us in. I know we'd all love to be having this conversation in Mozambique, maybe on the water fishing or underwater, seeing what's there. I'm just going to remind us how RARE got to Mozambique. We are over 50 years old, but singularly committed on supporting communities around the world in saving the planet's remaining biodiversity, and improving their resilience, both economically, but also to the growing threats and challenges of climate change. As we look towards 2040, we're really thinking about how we double down and really help these communities measure that impact and be singularly committed to those communities and the ecosystems around them. We think they're the best chance at saving life on Earth. But also, as you'll see as we get into Mozambique, some of the communities we're working with are also some of the poorest out there and really need our help. These places we're working to conserve are incredibly important for biodiversity, where we have incredible discoveries in terms of future pharmaceuticals, but also important ecosystem services they supply in terms of food that is provided to millions and billions of people around the Earth, including here in the United States as well. So such important places. But I won't talk too much more about the strategy. Happy to have that conversation later. Let me get into Mozambique, which is just an incredible country. For those of you who maybe just got off a call or were hiking somewhere and not centered on Africa, we're now on the southeast coast of Africa. Madagascar is the island continent offshore. It's a couple hundred miles across the Mozambique Channel. Amazingly, every time I say it, I'm just blown away. The coast of Mozambique is 1,500 miles long, about the same size as the east coast of the US. And along that coast, only about 30 million people. So just incredible, intact coastline, unmatched on the planet, honestly. What is also amazing about this coast, as you'll learn from Alice as we go in, until only a few years ago, the communities along the coast never had the right to actually manage that coastline. It's only been through the work of RARE in recent years, communities have gained the rights and begun to support in these different places along in Nampula, in Zambezi, in Ambe, and Maputo province, where they've begun to pilot community-based management of the oceans. So just an incredible, very large coastline. If you think about Mozambique, what many of you might immediately think of is its incredible terrestrial biodiversity. So it has huge tracts of parks and lands, like famous areas like Gorongosa, Limpopo, and Maputo National Park, where the RARE board recently visited. Annie mentioned she was there, myself as well, and a few others on this call. And it was the terrestrial landscapes in Mozambique are vast and incredibly in Maputo recovering dramatically. So the combination of government protection, but also community support has led to an incredible recovery of elephants, hippos, giraffes, and a range of species growing back on land. Rare is unique in thinking globally about the terrestrial biodiversity, but also as you go offshore into the marine environment. And what many of you may or may not know is that Mozambique has some of the most important and the most biodiverse coral reefs on the planet. Incredible underwater vibrance, because you look at the higher southern latitudes versus the lower latitudes, the tropics, that 1,500 miles provides an incredible gradient. And as I said, really intact ecosystems that provide abundant fisheries for the people, but also protected areas that are untouched by these fisheries that serve as nursery grounds as well. So just an incredible marine life that exists there, deserving of protection. But really, the only way the coast can be protected, the government does not have the resources, top-down policies are not going to be satisfactory, is through the communities that live and reside along these coasts. And for those of you that have visited or seen community groups along other coast areas, they know the waters, they have the sites on the resources, and they're the ones who truly have the ability to enforce zones, no-take zones where areas can replenish, or gear closures where certain gear types are not used. So the communities along the coast of Mozambique have been wanting for the ability to manage these resources. And as I mentioned, only in the last few years, begun to get the rights to manage them. Importantly, they're also adjacent to incredible, vibrant marine parks like Bazaruto Archipelago and Carimbas and some of these other places that have this incredible protected biodiversity. So with the population living, over half the population living on the coast, 95% of fisheries are produced by the people in Mozambique. This coast is not without its challenges. And if everything were all satisfactory, there would not be a need for a global organization to work there. But Mozambique, unfortunately, is one of the poorest countries on the planet today. Has also been through decades of challenging political conflicts. Has just in the last year alone, multiple cyclones have come in to hit the shores and really test the resilience of these communities. And we have a significant shift in available foreign aid funding, where historically over $500 million of aid has been given for poverty alleviation, education, health, et cetera, to support the people in Mozambique that has recently been taken away. So quite a challenging coast to operate, but arguably no more important place in the world to be thinking about conservation and conservation by communities. So with that, let me give a little bit of flavor of what that looks like, and then of course pass it to Elise, who's been doing this long before I ever arrived in Mozambique a few years ago. All of Rare's programs are rooted in pride, are rooted in celebration and ownership of these resources, from music to art to a variety of cultural experiences. Rare programs look different on the ground because we're supporting that natural pride in a place. In addition, we think that's driving the culture of conservation, the culture of care, the culture of protection and stewardship is one thing, but there's another thing that really drives, which is financial inclusion. And so our programs also really think about how communities connect together to be saving funding, saving finances, putting reserves in places, even with a small amount of funding they have, so that the ultimate resort of, say, overfishing or destructive fishing or cutting down mangroves is not as tempting. But also importantly, these savings clubs can become the building block for investing for a future, building up small micro enterprises and larger business to be invested in. And we can measure this across the thousands of savings clubs we've supported around the world in a variety of countries. We also think about the entirety of a fishery and not just the fishery, but also the agriculture that's happening inland of that fishery, the whole food system for these communities. And in many countries, similar to Mozambique, women and even youth make up a significant portion of the fishery, when our board was there, we looked out on these incredible reefs, but also every single morning at sunrise, women were out there gleaning off the reefs, pulling in important shellfish to feed their families, to trade in the markets. Often this part of the fishery goes undocumented, and it's a vital part of both food and commercial system. We invest here, we invest in 10 countries around the world that have some of the most important marine biodiversity, terrestrial biodiversity, and places where communities can matter. And we're thinking about it for the future. We're thinking about it for the children. This incredible image showing, just going back to that fun factor, but the potential for a relationship with nature that continues to sustain that biodiversity. Personally, having worked in international conservation nearly my whole career, it's been an incredible privilege to meet Elise Costa, who's here today. Elise has been a leader in conservation in Mozambique. I'll let her speak to this slide, but she has dove up and down the country, and it is a privilege that we have her leading RARES programs with communities benefiting from her science experience. So welcome, Elise. I'm going to pass it over to you, and I wonder if you could tell us a little more about your background. How did it happen that you became the leading Mozambican diver going up and down the coast? And I should say, one of the first women divers in Mozambique to ever do this. How did this come about?
Thank you, Caleb. The picture that you showed there, I think it ties really with what I am today. One of the pictures with my father, he was the one that taught me how to swim and how to love the water. But he was very protective, and I wanted to be free in the wild and to experience all of this. So I enrolled in this adventure far away from where I live in Maputo, go all the way up to northern side of the country in Cabo Delgado, where now is the Kirimba National Park. So at the time, there was no park. At the time, there was no people there, sort of protection inside in the park. So I was there to learn how to do survey underwater. And that was really back in the, let's say, maybe 30 or 40 years ago that I have been part of that. So when we went there, the whole biodiversity was intact, and the reefs and the species and the fish. So I was so amazed with that. But before we went to this place to take this training, so we were told that we are going to a place that is very remote with no food, and the food that you're supposed that you let's say usually eating, this is not going to be happening. So you need to make sure that you need to make your mind that where are you going. So we reached there for 3 months. I was in the middle of nowhere with the fishing community, and we will every day diving and reach to this fishermen, where they will day to day, the only thing they will do is just fishing and make sure that they have the revenue for their families. So one of the challenges that we had is exactly shortage of food, because where we live, the distance from the island and the city, the near city or the near town that we can buy some groceries, was like 2 or 3 days by boat, and the boat was only traveling to the island every month, once a month. So we had the supply just to last us for 1 month, and then waiting for the boat to come. So at some point we were like using the diving gear to go and look for more food, like lobster and the thing for us to survive. So after I finished that was during this period while I was taking a break from university. And then when I came back, I just joined again university. Then I had a role with the WWF that also funded my dissertation project from the university, which is the coral reef monitoring program that I was starting to do. So the WWF, when I joined the organization, my role, my task there was more to do the coral reef monitoring. That's why I was able to dive everywhere in the country. Not only that, but I helped create the Karimba National Park. And one of my role was to convince, right, quote unquote, like convince the community that it's a good thing to have a national park. So the community was like, why are we helping you, helping and protect all of this and reducing the fishing ground? This is going to be exclusion for us. This is going to be like the as we're going to the reduce the size of the place that we were supposed to fish. So we had this term no-take zone and sanctuaries. So that did not suit well with the community because they felt excluded. And we were there but my role was to teach them how important it is. But they were like, this is like something that we have to do every day, that we have to eat. So why are you saying to us that we need to close this area for 5 years or more years, and then we wait for the fish to grow so we can fish later? And what about now? So this term of sanctuary and no-take zone was like really not popular with the community. So so then I was with the WWF, and then I left the WWF. That's when one of the government officials knew about the work that we were doing in Karimba National Park. They said, okay, you can come and work for us because there is this big project that is starting, and then you can come. So the World Bank representative at the time, he said, no, I think you will be better for the project that is coming, that is talking about fishing right for communities. So what you do, you could be a really good fit for that. So that's how I joined REV.
That's amazing. Well, I think like a lot of people in conservation, you started on the science side, and then through science got to see these communities, and then it brought you over to where we are today with Rare. But you just had this amazing, probably unparalleled experience of having seen that whole coast and be able to channel that with communities. So now, what have you taken from that experience to be building into the community-based approach? You have these fishers who are, concerned about the closure of the fishery, but then all of a sudden you're talking about giving them increased rights to fish. So how does that work, and how does that work into the approach that we take with community-based conservation?
So, yes, so with the work that I was doing in the past with the WWF was more into the community, was more into the resource, basically how the habitat, the fish, the grow, how this is like conservation, why how this will affect the species, but not more in terms of the people that depend on the fish or the people that depends on those habitat coastal resources. Was more, so the Rare approach was more to integrate this component that was missing. And so at the time that we are like talking about community fishing rights, but that community fishing rights, that was not well syncing with the government, and because that means discrimination. That means we are going to use this term to separate from communities in the north, for communities in the south. I'm building this from the civil war that we had in the country for 16 years. So they have all of these concerns at the time. And not only that, but this component of fishing right was not on the legislation at the time. So we had to build this in the legislation. And so we started the process of including this community rights or no-take zones inside in the legislation. So we started to build this, and the work that I was doing with the sanctuaries. So the community was like fatigue, I can say that, to hear the word or the term sanctuaries, no-take zone, national parks, because they means for them exclusion, they means for them reduction of fishing ground. So my colleague and I, we came up with this new term, which is area to recover the resources and community manage fisheries, right? But that term in Portuguese. So that was really well taken by the government and the community, because the term sanctuary, the term exclusion, the term was not there. So it was even better. So with this opportunity for us to change the legislation, the whole component of Fish Forever, it's in the legislation. The term that we have come up with, my colleague and I, was also right now in the legislation. It took, let's say, 5 or 6 years to have that. And then after that, we have do all of these trainings with the communities, trainings, the component of the behavior, adoption behavior changing, where our community was like, we were like combining protection and the community and the behavior change. So that's how the whole process, the whole program that Ray is bringing was even easier for us to get in this into community, because it means that devolution of power to the community, not only that, but also help manage the resources in the ground.
Amazing, amazing. So you went from a scientist to a community work to a lawyer. So where are you going next? No, I'm kidding. But I mean, this idea is so powerful and cannot be understated, the challenge worldwide. You know, the immense coastline of Mozambique, but so many other countries. Were it not for the work of people like Alice, the communities do not have a say in how those waters are managed, do not even have the right to put aside their own protections, do not have a right to say what types of fishing gear, and then without those rights, lack security. So, I mean, it's just humbling to hear that story and to hear the work that you went through with others to achieve such a victory. And we know there's so much more work to do now to get adoption and the rollout of these plans. One of the videos we sent last week was of Moija, who is a emerging community leader. And I'm just, could you tell a little bit more about her story to place that video in context? As communities gain their rights to manage these waters, how does her story relate to that? For those of you that watch the video, and if you didn't, you can see it after.
Exactly. So that story, that it's really powerful, because the work Ray has the work Ray is doing in Mozambique is inspiring, because it touches different component, which is the governance. So that is very important component of whatever work or project you do with the community. You need to start with the governance within the community. And now we're talking about the women, the men, the youth, and the children, and how we integrate all of these segments in this community, and how we build the idea of work collectively. So this new legislation that I was talking about is the new REPMA, which is the maritime regulation, where it states that 40% of leadership in the community has to be women. So for us to start working in those communities, we need to start by structuring the community and then bring all of this component of 40% in the leadership. Moaija is one of the women leader, very strong leader in the community that she knows what the community needs. She has 9 children or 9 people there on her household that she needs to take care of. By doing that, she fishes in the morning. In afternoon, she goes and teach the young women in the community how to write and read. Why she's doing that? Because in the past, the fishing community or the fishers leader was only men that know how to write and read and very influential in the community. The women were not part of the community leadership or any structure of the community or any decision what the community needs. So Moaija now she has that. She teach the women how to write and read, and the women can start verbalize or vocalize what they need in the community. And they remember, and the women are the one that know that managing the household. So they know it's easy, it's on their blood or skin how to manage all of this. So with the training that we are doing with this community and bring the women into leadership, it was enlightenment, even for the men that were thinking that this is only our role, it's only us need to do this. So now the youth that was always thinking that if I grow, if I finish college or finish school, the first thing that I'm going to do is go to the big city, go out of community. So they don't think of giving back to the community to develop. So they move out of the community, move out of those. So that is one of the oh my God, what happened? Oh,
We got you.
okay.
Yeah,
So,
thank you.
okay. So that's what that we really make sure that we have this training, and the men were part of those community. They were like very elderly people, like 70, 60, 80 years old. That one that so the youth thought, this is only for people with let's say 60 years old to be part of this. So us as youth, we're not part of that. This is not our job. So when Waisha started to be, she ran for this position to be the community leader. So she started to invite everyone to come to the meetings, to be part of the meetings, to hear what's the importance of protection, what is important of including the inclusion of everyone, all the segments. And the youth started to say, okay, we can also be part of this. We can also run for this community for the governance. So that was one of the empowering this. So they started to run, and Moaija was one of the influence inspiring for the youth to be part of this community leadership. Exactly. So that was it. So and he was invited to be in one of the meetings in Madagascar to show his experience and how he's leading the community here in Mozambique.
That's amazing. Yeah, we have this network called Coastal 500 of these leaders who are able to then represent the work from one country up and down the coast in that country, but then also around the world. Really incredible to hear that story. But also going back to impact, so incredible. We know one of the determining factors of the success of marine conservation and terrestrial conservation is the inclusion in governance. And, it only takes one person to break the rules, to go poach, and to make enforcement much more costly and much more challenging. And this inclusive approach really dramatically reduces the costs of enforcement later on down the line and builds much more in compliance and is much better for both the community and the resources. So amazing, amazing story, Elise. Stephen, I saw your hand up. I'm going to do one more question, then we're going to get it over to crowd. So I don't know if it went away, but hopefully you still got it there. Elise, my last question for you before I pass it on to others to hear, what questions they might have about either what we've talked about or Mozambique or the broader enterprise of ocean conservation. So much has been accomplished, but there's so much work left to do. So without getting into the entire proposal, how are we going forward? What's next? What do we, as rare, but importantly, what do the communities and the ecosystems along the coast of Mozambique need going forward?
Well, one of the things the community definitely they need is resources for them to implement all of these tools that we have already put in the community. For example, Moija is just the story. It's really sad. The way that she it's very touching. So how can I say this? When she was giving the training to the community, the government stopped her, or the leadership and in Ilya, they stopped her of doing these trainings because she did not have the college education or a degree for that, a certificate for that. And then she said, okay, because I don't have that, I am going to fish in evening and in the early morning. And then in evening, I'm going to school to have my college degree so I can continue teach my community to be able to write and read, to be able to have a voice of what they're really doing, what is need in the community. And one of the things that they do is she teach not only to write and read, but to manage the money. Let's say to have a social fund in case of extreme event like cyclone that destroy completely their houses, because the houses built on the material that is not resistant to the extreme events, so they can have this money to rebuild themselves. So they need what I'm trying to say is this community, they need everything. They need basic. They don't have a running water, electricity. They really struggle to take the kids to school. And the first thing this community needs is education. When they are educated, when they know they can voice, they can tell, it's powerful. We can give them money every day, will not solve the problem. But if they have a knowledge, they have education, they can multiply, they can have business ideas, they can go. The Ray is now funding all business ideas that the community has. And now we can see the difference, the impact this has on the community.
Thanks, Elise. Yeah, I think getting into that question of durability, how do you take the ability to manage a resource, have that actually happen, and then start building the economic engine around it? And you're really beginning to get at that with some of these stories.